Every night, tens of older women sleep rough in Sydney's hospital waiting rooms, train station and internet cafes. To find the stereotypical image of the homeless person, they have slipped under the radar of most social services until the release of the report It Could Be You.
We are at the beginning of, to not be too dramatic, what could be described almost as a tsunami of older women, baby boomers, now at the point of reaching that age where they are suddenly incredibly vulnerable to homelessness. This really challenged people because the title of our research, It Could Be You, Female, Single, Older and Homeless, well, it could be many of us, because this was the story. These women weren't your typical, person with complex mental health issues, drug and alcohol issues, not pulling their weight in society. Most of these women were working or had worked all their life and suddenly found that they couldn't. So it could be you. And that message was very confronting for a lot of people.
Whilst no one knows the exact number of older women currently experiencing homelessness, most service providers and researchers agree that it is a fast-growing phenomenon and a cause of great concern.
The difference between us and them, the women that we interviewed who are already homeless, is a serious health problem perhaps, or age discrimination. A bloody-minded government that closes down half the university staff, for example. What we really need in Australia is quite a sort of housing revolution. So none of us are immune if we are. The formula is single, ageing, female. There's a risk factor. I mean, we had the better divorce laws introduced in the 70s. So a woman in her 20s, back in 1980, who was divorcing, had a couple of young kids, perhaps because of domestic violence, is now in her 50s. And so she's held it all together, raised the kids, and now it's all gone pear-shaped, as I said, because of either health crisis or age discrimination. And those women who have led independent lives, tough and difficult but independent lives, and now are finding themselves homeless. And that for us is the real worry about this, because we could be talking about thousands of women. And when we conducted this research and went and interviewed older women who found themselves homeless, they said, well, yes, I slept rough, but I hid because I was scared and because I was ashamed. So if you're going to go and count the homeless, you're going to miss a lot of women.
They also will be somewhere probably where there's a lot of, one of two things, either where there's a lot of light and where there's people moving through so that there is some visibility, so that they're safe, or they are very hidden. So they'll be round dark little corners, hidden away from everyone, in their car, sleeping in a car if they've got a car, that sort of thing. Or staying awake at night and sleeping during the day, because that is much safer for them. So the women and the men's experience in terms of rough sleeping is very, very different. And I don't think we actually have enough understanding of that in our policy setting and our policy thinking through our government planning processes in terms of the differences that makes and what that means for how we need to respond.
Well, maybe, it's very natural that they would grieve, and when their children might be involved as well, feeling bad and cut off from their own community. But there's always those issues of grief and loss. I guess some of those natural things that would come, for some of them it's a fear. Of course, there's always the guilt when anyone leaves a violent situation. Should I go back? Did I make the right decision? I think sometimes when we look at the big picture, it can be overwhelming. And if we just think of that one person, and I have today with that one person, that certainly makes a difference rather than getting overwhelmed. And I can make a difference. And I learn a lot from the women that I work with. It's not a patronising thing where I'm here to help you. It's doing, for me, it's doing life with them, and I've got as much to learn from them as well, and they contribute to my life.
Yet, with innovative urban planning and policy adjustments, a lot can actually be achieved.
That they were incredibly resilient and incredibly hopeful that if they could get themselves sorted out with some housing, life would be good. They would continue. And those that we interviewed that had managed to find some stable housing, you know, as meagre as that was to perhaps our way of thinking about what permanent housing could or should be, the fact that they had their own key to the door, that they felt safe, they felt secure, that they had their place, was the most amazing experience and was incredibly restoring and nurturing for them. So I think we have to actually really focus on that, and not focus on, you know, the downside or the chaos or the detriment and the enduring capacity of that, but focus on, with minimal support and minimal intervention, what we found with these women, if they managed to find somewhere to live where they felt safe and secure, and that's the key to this, safe and secure, with a key that they could have their own door, that they actually were blossoming. Whilst we could argue, or some could argue, that, you know, the provision of a house is quite expensive, the provision of no house in the long run is more expensive, because we know that as your health starts to deteriorate, as you become more uncomfortable, more distressed, you start to use emergency services like accident and emergency, ambulance services, that sort of stuff. The costs of that are phenomenal.
So we're recommending things like boarding houses for older women, exclusively for older women, because in boarding houses there's a real security and safety risk for older women. One of the women talked to us about being raped in a boarding house. So we think if we create boarding houses for older women, that would be a good development for them. And we've also talked about, one of the other ideas we had was about a lot of three-bedroom houses in Australia, perhaps nearly a quarter, having only one person living in them. And that person is likely to be an older woman who's outlived everybody. And she may be struggling to maintain that house, may be rattling around in that. She may like to have someone else living there with her, but wants her own space, as both might want it. So about how we could create two independent living spaces within that three-bedroom house on a temporary basis, so it doesn't affect the value of the house. Most of them talked about it being a devastating experience. One of them said, you know, I know I shouldn't say this, but maybe I shouldn't have left the violent relationship, because at least I had a roof over my head and I had my children.
For some of them, of course, it can take a long time to get over whatever brought them to homelessness, and they have a lot of things to work through. But for some of them, and many of them, it can be a turning point. I guess I can't say that it's all pretty and they move from here into a beautiful house and life goes as planned. Sometimes it can seem like there's challenge after challenge for them. Even when they're moved into government housing, there's issues there. And at times I can feel helpless because I think that it should get better for them. But that's hopefully where people like myself and the church and other people in community and services can fill those gaps so that they do have a hope and a future.
These women actually deserve a house, they deserve safety. They've done nothing wrong, you know, so we need to keep that message going.